regarding Arbor Day. Whereas Arbor Day has been celebrated since 1872 as a day for recognizing and promoting the value of trees. And whereas urban forest is an important component of Waterville's infrastructure that enhances our community by providing and conserving energy, purifying our air, reducing water pollution and stormwater runoff, increasing property values, and beautifying our streets, parks, businesses, and homes. And whereas through the planting and nurturing of trees, children and adults may better understand and appreciate the complexity of nature and the importance of conservation, and may directly contribute to the enrichment of our environment. And whereas trees are of vital importance to our economy, our bountiful forests provide valuable renewable timber and energy resources, protect our indispensable watersheds, shelter our abundant wildlife, make neighborhoods more attractive, and beautify our nation. Whereas trees which we plant today are a growing investment in our future and will become a treasured living legacy. Now therefore, I, Lori Brody, as Mayor of the City of Waterville, Barbara Bruno in her stead, do hereby proclaim October 4th, 2019 as Arbor Day. In the City of Waterville, and urge all residents to renew our pledge to respect, protect, and enhance our natural surroundings, and to encourage our residents to plant a tree to enhance the quality of life for all residents. All right, there you go for that. Go plant a tree. So tonight we have citizens' comments. I know a lot of you came tonight for a particular piece of legislation. If is anybody here tonight that would like to speak anything not relating to Ordinance 819? No. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and we have Matt Hireman here from Lucas County Consolidated 911 Services, and they have a Mr. Byers, our County Commissioner.
I'm not going to talk for long, but first of all, I want to say thank you to the Waterville Council and to everyone that's here tonight for letting us join you. Matt and I have been working on something for the last 9 months that I think is going to be better for our community and also save money for our community as well. And when you get governments trying to do two things, better government and also save money, those are two things that rarely go together when you're talking about governments. What we're talking about is consolidation of 911. In Lucas County, we have 6 public safety answering points, and in various parts of the county. And our proposal is, we were asked to study this proposal and to consider whether, in fact, we should consolidate down to 1, and what best practices is and how we can utilize it, and what's going to be the safest for our community. After months of research, we have worked with administrators across the county, including John. We've met with, on a couple occasions, your mayor. We have talked to administrators across the county, and we had a working document that, as people would ask questions, we would try to answer the questions within that document. The document grew from 9 pages to 45. Okay. I didn't read the last 5 pages, but it was, no, I did, I'm kidding. But it is a working document that answers the questions as best that we could so that we are as open and transparent in this process as we possibly can be. The bottom line is when you have a consolidated 911 process, you can use best practices, which in the answering, Mayor, how are you? In answering calls is to separate the call taker from the person that is actually communicating with the law enforcement officers or first responders, so that one can focus. For instance, in a domestic violence case, if someone is hiding in the closet, you want to be able to focus on them and listen to everything they're saying, so not only are you dispatching a unit quickly, but you're also giving them the information that they need to be safe and to respond effectively to whatever they're going to find at the scene. So I will turn this over to the true expert. When he talks about 911, I have to call him Mr. Hireman. But this is Matt Hireman, and he has done a wonderful job, and I hope any questions that you have will be answered tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thank you for having us out. We really appreciate it. So as the Commissioner mentioned, in December of 2018, we were asked by a number of stakeholders in the county to look at consolidation of 911. That included the fire chiefs, as well as some of the public safety answering points that exist in our county, and the commissioners took that on. Consolidation is something that's going on all over our country right now. It's going on for a number of reasons. Number one is technology. more and more of us are using cell phones, which means that it's blurring jurisdictional lines. So as you're traveling in your car, you don't see them. Well, you guys do because you're on council, but you're crossing jurisdictions all the time. So that's one reason. The second reason, building on technology, is that it creates a lot more investment that has to occur in these public safety answering points, a lot more training, a lot more requirements that are needed. Makes it harder for single public safety answering points to survive in this time period in history. So when we were asked to look into this, first we looked at the structure that we currently have. As the commissioner pointed out, we have 6 public safety answering points in the county that are primary. We have 1 secondary and 1 consolidated dispatch system. When we put that all together, our system is not broken today, but we can certainly do it more effectively and we can certainly do it more efficiently. So when we talk about why we should do this, the reason is not just financial. Really the reason has to do with how effectively we can deliver the service. And I just want to touch on a couple things really quickly. When you talk about consolidation, as the commissioner brought up, you can separate call taking and dispatching. This is a national best practice. It's not for debate. The National Fire Protection Association has a standard 1221, which recommends this for every community. If you take a step back, what is the NFPA? It's an organization that recommends objective standards to communities that reduce liability and saves lives. They recommend this as a best practice for us to utilize. And as the commissioner said, in key incidents, it particularly helps to ensure that the person calling, the citizen calling, is getting undivided attention, and that public safety responder is getting undivided attention as well. Another reason is specialization. When we specialize, it allows for our dispatchers to be good at what they do, to be trained, and this proposal provides 50 hours of dedicated training for every single professional in what they do, which is something that's not going on countywide. And on that, another thing that's not going on is we don't have standardized operating procedures or quality assurance countywide. So when you wake up in the morning, if you're anything like me, I wake up in Springfield Township, I drop 3 kids off in South Toledo, I usually go downtown to work, and then I usually head to Oregon for a meeting in Maumee. I've crossed over almost every single public safety answering point in the county, and there is no consistent level of training or quality assurance that exists across those 6. And when I'm calling on my cell phone, I'm crossing over jurisdictional bounds, and when I do that, that call can go to different towers, which is another reason why we want to do consolidation. Call misdirection happens all the time in our community. When you call on your cell phone, it's simply going to the jurisdiction whose tower it's in. So like where I live on the border of Savannah Township and Springfield Township, every call I've made in the last 14 years to 911 has always gone to the wrong jurisdiction and then has to be transferred on. Particularly when you're driving as well, this can create problems when you're crossing over jurisdictions to try and share information amongst different agencies that are working together. So this is why most people consolidate together. So if we wanted to consolidate, the question is, financially, what does that mean for us? So that's the second area of benefit that it brings to our county. So today, our financial system is set up basically in 2 ways. We have an infrastructure cost, and we have an operational cost. Your infrastructure cost is currently paid for through 2 different tax levies that are mounted on all of us. Number 1 is a property tax levy, which is 0.7 mil, which provides $4.9 million annually that comes into the county, into a dedicated fund, and is spent only on the infrastructure of 911, meaning the call system, your CAD system, which is a computer-aided dispatch system, that's the computer program that they're utilizing, and it also supports our interoperable communication system, which is the radios that's on all of our first responders and the network that keeps that alive. That piece stays the same and is unimpacted by this proposal. The second half, the bigger half of what our 911 system costs, is $15.3 million. That's the operational side. That's these 6 different public safety answering points. And what I'm going to show you in a couple minutes is how much it saves when we consolidate. Most jurisdictions going into it don't have the opportunity to save when they consolidate because they don't share common infrastructure. We already share a common CAD. We already share a common radio system. We already share a common telephone system. These are the big ticket items that when most jurisdictions come together, they have to spend millions in those capital costs to eliminate any jurisdiction's ability to do this. When we've gone around the country, and we've literally gone around the country talking to people about this, they say to us, you guys must have the easiest consolidation that exists, because we already share those things. This is just an operational thing of bringing different operations together. So if we wanted to consolidate, the next question is, what's your role in it? Why are you guys here talking to us? How do we even do this? Okay, so to amend the plan, and actually, Waterville has played one of the most crucial roles in this consolidation of any jurisdiction in Lucas County. In 2010, you guys chose to stop paying your bills to Lucas County, okay? And we want to thank you for that, because we wouldn't be here today. Right. Thank you. We wouldn't be here today if you didn't do that, okay? But you did it for good reason. At the time, the reality was you looked around the county and you said, wait a minute. First of all, we're overpaying to Maumee. I said it. You guys have said it. It's the fact. You came to the county and asked if we could do it for cheaper. We gave you a rate, okay? I don't remember if it was cheaper or not. I was like in high school when this happened. And the reality was then it came back, and then you guys asked for an opinion. You looked around, you said, wait a minute, we're a village. At that time you were a village. We're paying. Why isn't White House paying? Why aren't the other jurisdictions paying? So you asked Julia Bates for an opinion on this. She wrote to the Secretary of State at the time, got an opinion back, and that opinion basically said, you are correct, Waterville. You do not need to pay unless you change the final plan, which relates to all of this, which is what we're asking you to do today as we work through this process. Basically, as a county, we have to go together and make that choice. You can't have one-off jurisdictions going and making deals for dollar amounts. So the reality is what started in 2010, we are picking up today. Consolidation's been discussed for 19 years in this community. Basically, all we're trying to do is organize that conversation, bring data to that conversation, and inform people so that they can make the right choice. So if we're doing that, in order to do that by state law, there's a 5-member voting panel, okay? The city of Toledo, as the largest jurisdiction, gets 1 vote. We didn't make this, okay? So I didn't pick that, okay? The president of the Board of County Commissioners gets 1 vote. So that this year is Commissioner Tina Skelton-Wozniak. The second largest jurisdiction gets a vote on their own. So in our county, that's Savannah Township. So that board gets to elect someone to represent them. The remaining townships get to pick 1 representative. The townships have picked Andy Glenn. So Andy Glenn from Springfield Township will be that representative. And the remaining municipalities, which you are 1 of 9, get to elect someone to represent you. So 5 out of 9 of your jurisdictions have to identify someone to represent you. I can tell you that Mayor Atkinson is probably not here just for his health. He has put himself forward as being interested in this job, so that's why he's here. So what your role in this is to appoint a representative to represent you. And if your vote matches the other 4 or 5 people, you guys end up with a representative. It's a funny process, but it's what they gave us. And so Mayor Atkinson is one person who has put themselves forward for this. So that's how the voting works. The commissioners have taken the first formal step, and in front of you I've given you a copy of a resolution as well as the formal addendum that's being proposed for that committee to review. And the commissioners passed a resolution saying within 60 days they want to have this vote, which is what the state code requires the commissioners to do. So that's been passed, so there's a 60-day clock that you guys kind of have to live within. We have been talking about it for 9 months, maybe not enough here. But so that's basically the time frame. Savings. Some people are out there saying, oh, these are just crazy projections. I can tell you if you're really interested, review the report. There is nearly 6 pages worth of assumptions, detailed salaries, wages, everything is in there. It is, I will say to you, it is a projection because as your administrator will tell you, that's all you can ever do with a budget is project. I guarantee your police chief is not going to hit your administrator's projection this year, but it's probably going to be close. That's what administrators do. That's what we've done. We've put together administration. We have an independent consultant from Chicago that's looked into this. They agree that this is the best projection that can be put together today. Okay, so it's very detailed projection. These are not willy-nilly numbers. You'll see in there breakdowns of assumptions. In the assumption, I just want to highlight a couple things. Again, it splits operations between law enforcement, fire, EMS. This is a best practice, and this is something that your fire chiefs, Lucas County fire chiefs, are all demanding. In fact, they've passed a resolution in support of this piece of it. They're not commenting on dollars. That's not what they do. That's what administrators do. But what they're saying is they believe this will be safer and better for them. And let's talk about them for a second. In many of these call centers, it's very difficult for a 2-person call center, such as Maumee, Savannah Township, to take in calls, which they're required by state law to be their first priority, be managing a police officer on the street who's on a traffic stop, and then also trying to manage any type of fire scene that's going on. That's very difficult for 2 or 1 person to do at a single time. So by separating that, you really allow that focus. That's why you're seeing support from your fire chiefs for this. Again, the assumptions on staffing are not willy-nilly. They are based on Erlang tool, which is a national best practice recommended by APCO and NENA, which are the national associations of 911 call taking that recommend this tool. So again, it's not just pulled out anywhere. And I really want to highlight quality assurance and training are paramount to this. You'll see in the assumptions that this is the only organization that will offer 50 hours of offline dedicated training for every single person. So right now, there's not consistent training across the county. This takes every single call taker and dispatcher that will be taking your community's calls off the line for a full week every year, sending them training, providing them training, not in roll call, but outside of their day-to-day operations to allow them to do the continuing education they should be doing. And it has 2 full-time quality assurance and training officers who will be checking to make sure that people are complying as they should be and doing that. And when you do all this gives you an idea of the efficiency that can be garnered by merging together. We will still save, as a community, countywide, $5 million a year, which is about a 34% savings in cost. That savings and reinvesting into things like training officers, sharing some of that savings with people, in jurisdictions like yourself, and then also providing some of it to provide higher quality service leads to a better outcome for everybody. So the reality is when you're operating 6 operations, when you can just operate 1, there's a lot of opportunity for savings, okay? The last 2 things I really want to cover real quick are how do we figure out who pays what, okay? This is 2 big fights coming up. I'm just going to tell you our proposed solution here. Number 1 is how do we allocate the cost? So it costs you $10.1 million to do this. How much does Waterville pay, and how did you figure that out? The answer to that is you might just say, well, just do it by population. It's objective, easy to understand. And I would tell you, and Toledo would probably even agree with you, it's not a fair way to do it. Toledo would drastically underpay their proportional share because workload is what matters. Just because your population is X doesn't mean that's the workload you're creating on the system. So we think there has to be a figure in there that deals with workload. And we believe the best way to measure that is by incident. You might say, what's an incident? An incident is the creation of a CAD event in our computer-aided dispatch. We can objectively measure it by jurisdiction. We can plot it on a map. We can show it to you. We can list it off for you. And it also is a fair leveler of things. So the reality is, if I get in a car accident on Bancroft where I live and somebody hits me, my wife's the only one around because we live on 70 acres. She may or may not call 911, so you're going to get 1 call for service for that. If that same accident occurs on 475 at ProMedica Parkway, you're going to get 40 calls for service on that. So it's not necessarily a fair way to measure how much workload it took. Incident represents the best way for us to measure that, and it can objectively be measured. The second confrontational issue, well, I'll mention this one too. So the projected cost based on that incident that Waterville would pay in this new system would be $94,367. Which I know is more than 0, which is what you're paying today. But I want to note a couple things. First of all, it's less than the $130,000 you were paying before you asked the Attorney General what he thought about this, and Julia Bates. And number 2 is that it's less than it would cost if we just took the whole system today and charged your proportional share, okay? If we charged you by incident for the burden you're creating on our system today, it would be about $140,000, okay? So it is a more efficient price for you to pay. The second thing I'd say about the price is that the commissioners, in putting this proposal together, understand that jurisdictions, particularly smaller ones, and Waterville is not really particularly a smaller one in Lucas County, they can't turn on a dime. So if you look at jurisdictions like Waterville Township, who's facing some financial hardship, Jerusalem Township, Richfield Township, it takes time for their budgets to adapt. So the commissioners have put forth that any savings that they have, they are going to use to offset costs for 4 years. So you will not pay the full burden of this until 2024. In the first year of operation, 2021, the commissioners would subsidize 100% of any jurisdiction not currently paying so that you have all those years. So that would mean you wouldn't even get your first bill until 2022. In 2022, the commissioners would stabilize is the word we use, subsidize is a bad word, would stabilize 50% of the budget in 2022. And in 2023, the commissioners would stabilize 25% of it, you would cover 75% of it, and then by 2024, you would pay the full cost. The details of that are all broken down on the most exciting page in the document, page 38 and 39. So you have, well, there you go. Mary Duncan's got it. She's always on top of it. So all the numbers are there. So you can see this is in voodoo math. This is all plotted out. The dollars are all there. The last confrontational issue I want to cover is power. Power is a real thing. It matters. How we lay out boards, how we lay out control really matters. And so going into this, it was clearly understood when we were trying to put together something that could actually work for everybody that we need to balance power. We need to balance power between law enforcement and fire. We need to balance power between large jurisdictions and small jurisdictions, between municipalities and townships and villages. There are different interests and there are different focuses that those different types of jurisdictions have. So what has been proposed is a 7-member board to lead this organization. It's proposed that that 7-member board would be made up of all law enforcement and fire officials because other than the residents that are served by this, they are the #1 customers of dispatch. They're the ones that need to make sure it works for them. So what's proposed here in the 7-member board is that the county sheriff would have 1 seat, the largest municipal police chief, which is Toledo, would have 1 seat, the largest municipal fire chief would have 1 seat, which is also Toledo, the largest township police chief would have a seat, so that's Savannah Township. There would be a township fire chief as selected by the Township Association. There would be a municipal police chief, which would be a representative that you guys, police chief, would have an opportunity to get, and a municipal fire chief that you guys would have a possibility to represent. If by chance your police chief and fire chief don't get appointed by their peers to that board, they get a spot on a subcommittee that every single police chief will be on a law enforcement subcommittee, every single fire chief will be on a fire subcommittee, and every single administrator or their designee will be on a financial subcommittee. These are important subcommittees. I've been bringing them up because the reality is that for anything to change, it needs to start in a subcommittee. The subcommittee needs to recommend it up to the board. So that ensures that one or two police or fire chiefs can't make policy for the entire county. It takes involvement of all the police chiefs. Equally so, even more important from your perspective, from a fiscal perspective, to control costs of an independent council of governments, which is being proposed here. This would be an independent body, okay, separate from county. Probably call it Lucas County, although I don't want to because it makes people think the county's taking over when it's really not. But be a separate council of governments like CJCC, like the Mental Health Recovery Services Board, like the Board of Health, separate body. And as it goes through, it would have you would each have a representative, and in order to pass the budget every year, a majority of the administrators, mayor and or his designee, have to vote in support of the annual budget and have to vote on any collective bargaining agreements that are agreed upon. So that provides fiscal control for your jurisdiction so that this board of police and fire chiefs who just love to spend money don't just go out and spend all your money and then the bill comes back to you. So those are the controls we've tried to put in place to make sure that it's effective. I tried to go as fast as I can. Hopefully that was 15 minutes. We're happy to answer any questions we can on it.
Also, every dispatcher is going to be offered a job. So no one's losing their job unless they choose to do something else.
Right.
So,
Which is important.
right.
Matt, just to mention, Waterville is not the only area that is not currently paying.
That's correct.
As I see here, we have Harborview, Harding Township, Holland, Jerusalem Township, Providence Township, Richfield, Spencer, Springfield, Swanton, Sylvania City. I mean, there's a
15
it's
jurisdictions are not paying.
It's
yes.
not just Waterville that's
No, I
not
didn't mean to pick
paying,
on you. Yeah, there's
But-
a lot of delinquent people here.
which will bring them.
Use that
Are we delinquent? But that will actually bring them in, and they will pay their fair
Yes.
share starting in
Exactly.
2022.
And that's what makes it cost effective for all of us. If we spread the burden based on incident, we all pay an equal and share amount. It makes it a fair way for us. So yes, absolutely correct. There are 15 jurisdictions. And that really is to the heart of what was asked. Waterville basically said, why are we going to pay if no one else is going to pay? And the county
saying.
said, and the state said, yep, you're right. And that came back, and it just took us 9 years to make it back, but we're here. So.
Well, great presentation. I appreciate you coming. Does anybody have a question for Matt? I know.
Matt, I read it, but you highlighted a couple things that brought a question. I know this board would be created, the fiscal management with the administrators and so forth.
Yep.
Right now, today, the way the plan is written, will this be a taxing authority, or the revenues are going to come from the jurisdictions?
No, that's a great question. So there's three different sets of revenues that can come in here, okay? So on the infrastructure side, it will remain the same. Property tax, that will still come in, that funds the infrastructure, okay? So set that aside. On the operational side, what'll happen is that a bill will be sent, and we can discuss, we haven't come to a conclusion, we want to hear from jurisdictions. It could be quarterly, it could be biannually, whatever is best for the jurisdiction, and you will be billed. Your next question will be, what happens when Spencer Township, I'm not picking on Spencer Township, or some jurisdiction doesn't pay? This is a very unique code in the fact that the state authorizes and requires our county prosecutor to pursue payment because the state doesn't want people screwing around with the funding for 911. Okay, so and if our current prosecutor, Julia Bates, chose not to pursue that, it requires the state attorney general to follow in her footsteps and pursue payment on behalf of this entity. So every jurisdiction would be required to pay if we pass it as our final plan. It's required by state law that they pay. So so it's not a taxing authority, it's not an independent authority, but rather funded, kind of like that's how CJCC is, that's how the Board of Health is. They don't tax anybody, they get it from you guys. So
Just to follow up, can you give us an example of some other community, whether it be in Ohio or Michigan, that has gone through this?
yes, I think the best example is Pittsburgh in Allegheny County. We share a newspaper, perhaps you heard it with them, and they went through it. They similarly, actually, they had 7 PSAPs, similar to us. They brought together over 100 police and fire agencies into one. So people say, oh my God, how could somebody manage it? It's completely manageable. Computer-aided dispatch makes it possible. So Allegheny County, we're happy to take you on a trip there if you really want to see it. You have to fill out your own ethics report around that. but the reality is that we've talked with them a lot. Their jurisdiction we've looked to a lot. Montgomery County is not fully integrated, but they're in Ohio, and they have some good examples down there. They have done some innovative things together. Rochester, New York has done it. Those are the ones kind of in the Rust Belt region. You look to the south and the west, they just kind of kick our butts with efficiency all the time, so you can find a ton out there, but it's not comparable because those jurisdictions are all merged in lots of things all the time, and they do it in their sleep. So those are really kind of the best examples that we've been talking a lot. Dublin, Ohio is not comparable economically to us, but they've merged 6 jurisdictions in the suburbs together. They're incredibly adept at what they do, so we've also visited and talked a lot with them. So.
Last question. You go down to the next community and do a great presentation. At the end of the day, it doesn't come together. What's the option? What's the alternative?
I don't want to answer that question. I mean, we'll have to come back together and try and find another proposal that works. But hopefully it will come together. This is the most momentum we've ever built around this. This has been discussed for 19 years. And one of the biggest challenges, honestly, has generally been not that people don't understand why it's better, although that seems to be the problem today. The problem generally was people just couldn't figure out the money and logistics. And so we were excited when we figured that out, but then our community forgot why it was good to do it. So now we're re-educating some of that too. So the answer would be we'd have to come back together and find another proposal. And we're open to working together with people. But that's what it is.
Thank you.
Yep. And then just to be clear, what we really do need from you at some time in the coming weeks or whatever is a resolution appointing who you want to represent you. Just to be clear on what our ask is from you guys. So, okay?
Matt, if I may
Yeah,
also.
absolutely.
Just a real technical question maybe, and that is if the cost is based on incidents, is that reviewed every year in the cost per?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the incidents that are currently in here are based on a 4-year rolling average that's been going on. That's what we recommend that the new entity utilize. That way, so let's just say you have some officer that goes out and makes a ton of traffic stops and a ton of incidents are created out of that. You wouldn't want to see a 1-year spike. You would want to see it happen over a number of years. So like Toledo's a good example of this. When they put on a new police class, their arrests and their incidents spike like crazy. And that's okay. I mean, but it's because there's more officers on the street. There's more training that goes on. You know, a lot of things occur because of that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just what happens. It's a natural, it happens in every city. Toledo's not unique in that. So that's a really common thing to happen. So we recommend a 4-year rolling average to buffer that. So even if it does continue over 2, 3, 4 years, your budget people can see, oh, our incidents are up, but it's only hitting you 25% at a time. So makes sense. So.
And then, have time for another one?
Oh, yeah.
One of the concerns I heard was that if you consolidate, the central, wherever it is, won't know the geography of a distant part of the county.
That's a great question. I can send you screenshots after this. So that's one of the things that really pushed Allegheny County over the edge. That's one of the things that's pushed a lot of support of a lot of police chiefs over the edge here is that now because of computer-aided dispatch, it's all a GIS-based system. So when you call 911, your location is popping right up on a map. And that map, there's 6 screens in front of most dispatchers, in front of most call takers. It zooms right into that location and you're getting a surrounding area. And then you can see the units that are traveling with AVL, automated vehicle location. And we can see who's traveling around and we can see that happening. You can also click on a button no different than on your phone and look at the ortho photo, which is a fancy 911 term for a satellite photo. And you can look at that and you can see the buildings and the outlines of the buildings. You can zoom in. So the reality is that geography is less of a challenge today than it was before we had our modern CAD system, which we got in 2014. The last thing I'd say about geography is, you know, you might have concerns about common names, right? When people call, both officers in the field as well as call takers, they're in moments of distress. And so they may not be able to say, yeah, I'm at 25 North 2nd Street. Nobody's talking like that when, you know, things are going on. They're saying, well, I'm right at, you know, the Sunoco on Jefferson. If you type into our CAD, SUN, you can start to auto-populate, and you can look at a scrolling list, and they can find your location that way. So many common names for things are put in there. All of your police chiefs and fire chiefs have helped inform that database with common names. So if they say, you know, I'm down on, you know, at the general store, they know in that community that's been a common name that's been put on it. So.
Good. Yeah, thank you.
All right, and then if I could just say, I know your fire chief has been very involved in our process, and I don't know if he has anything to add, but I just wanted to mention that he has been very involved in our discussions, and I don't know if he has anything to contribute.
thank you. So council, make sure you go home and read this. So what I understand is within 60 days, we have to come up with a resolution and vote on it and get that information back to you.
And the resolution needs to be comfortable. It doesn't, I don't need to know whether you love it or hate it. You need to know who you want to represent.
Okay.
It has to be a mayor of a village or a municipality.
Okay.
Don want to speak? Don, did you want to speak?
I was elected by default. When all of the 9 mayors met to decide on this, none of them wanted to do it. So I raised my hand and said, okay, I'll do it, and with the understanding that all of the mayors knew that I was in favor of this, and if elected, I was going to cast my vote in favor of doing this. So I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 42 years. I graduated from the FBI Academy in the spring of 2001, and then right in the fall, September 11th happened, and I got thrust into a role of Homeland Security, where my office was located in the 911 building, and I sat through meetings ad nauseum about communication. I quickly learned that we had, as he said, one of the best communication systems in the country, and so as a mayor, then I went on and became mayor. I think I'm probably one of the oldest people in the room here, but I know as a police officer of 42 years that when there's a mass casualty incident and something of that nature that's really requires a huge effort and a combined effort of multiple jurisdictions, the fire people are the ones that do this best. They're the ones, you know, they tell us to take our car and go park over here, and we go there, but they're the ones that are usually the lead in taking on something, and we see like what happened at 9/11. But so as a mayor, for the safety of the residents in our village, I naturally turn to our fire chief, and then I want to know from him what the other fire chiefs in their association are recommending, and what I've heard from him consistently is about 99% of those fire chiefs are 100% in favor of this. There are some that don't want to, for possibly political reasons, step forward and be vocal about it. But I have to defer to my fire chief, and I will support this. And I know that our Captain White is here tonight. She's a very talented, super talented lady when it comes to communications. And she looked into this with a lot more intelligence than what I am able to do so. And kind of had some apprehension about it, but came back in favor of it. Obviously, we would lose more when you talk about losing people. Toledo will lose the most command officers. I think we'll stand to lose about 6 or 7 of our sergeants, which we will have to take back into our organization. But the whole structure of the thing, the fact that you can start off as a dispatcher and not sit there your entire career in that chair, and there's a structure and to move up through that structure and maybe possibly one day become the head of the whole thing, and then receive the training, and then the idea of consolidation is something we've discussed between ourselves and Waterville and White House. And it seems like when you try to consolidate, there's always a couple of people that want to come up with reasons why we can't do. This is very doable for us. And Dennis Cole is also here tonight, and probably one of the most knowledgeable people you will find anywhere in the country as far as radio systems. So if I'm elected, I'm going to vote yes.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, any other comments then from council? No questions? Okay, thank you again, and we will do our due diligence. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. Okay, moving on to staff reports from our administrator, Mr. Gokenauer.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Council has a copy of my report. One thing I did want to add, I know I did mention that the Ohio Department of Transportation has been studying the Roche-DeBoeuf Interurban Bridge, and they are going to have a public meeting on November 20th at 5:30 at Waterville Primary School to talk about, I guess, the future of the Roche-DeBoeuf Bridge. So I wanted to mention that. And if anyone has any questions about my report.
I did have one question, John, if I may, not to,
Okay.
and that is you attended a meeting of area leaders with regard to growth in the district, in the school district. I wondered what the outcome of that was, or?
The superintendent had a meeting, and he invited a bunch of people in the area, and we kind of talked about things and what were concerns to say the village of White House, the city of Waterville, concerns that the school district had, and just kind of talked about different things, and then agreed to maybe meet again and talk some more, so.
That's a great idea. Okay, any other questions for the administrator? Okay, moving on to the law director.
No report tonight, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Our finance director?
No report tonight.
Okay, thank you. And our treasurer, there he is. Mr. Schultz.
Make my appearance from behind the curtain. Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of council. I'll keep this very brief. I know Mr. Williams gave a summary of this at the last meeting, but we do have the July information reconciled. And as you can see, we have a little over $7 million in investments in cash, highest number we've had in the last year and a half. General fund, very healthy at about $2 million. Capital fund down about 150, but that's because we're starting to pay off some of our paving programs, so that makes perfect sense. And right now, our water and sewer fund are at about $2.5 million, which again is the highest we've had in the last year and a half. So right now, things are pretty good on the finance side. So that's the end of my report.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Schultz?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, communications from council. We can start with Mr. Bruno here.
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frank?
No report this evening.
No report,
Now
thanks.
going down the line, Mr. Pedro?
Just a reminder that Thursday night, the 26th, Thursday night, 26th or 7th? 26th. The Waterville Economic Development Foundation is having a meeting at the Story Point. The Story Point officials are coming to town to talk about their facility and how they selected Waterville to build their organization, and all are invited.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Duncan?
Just a reminder that our Roche de Boot Festival is Saturday, 9 to 5. The parade kicks off at 10 a.m., and we hope to see everybody downtown.
Right. And I guess I'd like to take this opportunity while we have a great attendance tonight is we are having our unlimited pickup on, what is that date?
The 4th.
October 4th. So we will not be having another council meeting before that. So that's a big day in Waterville, I know. Unlimited pickup. And also, I did see that the fishing derby was well attended. That's very good. They do that every year. It's a great event. All right, so what you guys have all been waiting for. Moving on to old business. An ordinance amending the municipal zoning map of the city of Waterville to change the zoning classification of a certain 43-acre parcel of land, part of parcel number 96-25959 and parcel number 96-25961, located at 6730 and 6824 Anthony Wayne Trail from A1 Agricultural District to M1 Industrial District. The first reading was June 3rd, the second reading June 24th, the third reading, public hearing and legislative action for July 22nd. It was tabled until this evening, September 23rd. So, Mr. Dombey, how would you suggest we do this? We take citizens' comments first?
Well, we have to bring it off the table, or you can take citizen comments first. I note that the map has been substantially changed, which citizens may not know, and the acreage has been reduced, and it is away from all the subdivisions. And I'm not sure people are aware of that. I know that Mr. Golkenauer had some maps if people would like to see what it is that would be discussed or coming off the table, perhaps before it's brought off the table, if that's going to be the case.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, would any citizens like this updated map? Yeah. Okay. Wait till
I might add,
Excuse me.
while the maps are waiting to come around, you will see that right now there has been development on Choctaw to a large intersection which is in the area with the diagonal lines. That is the only area the city is considering changing, which allows the buffers on the back half and this large portion toward the subdivisions. So I know that public comment and discussions with some of the developers who have a financial interest as well as the residents was taken into consideration when the map was revised. And that's about all I have, just informationally for you all.
Right, several residents came to our last council meeting and expressed concern that the rezoning was gonna be abutting their properties, and council took that into consideration and has, you know, made some modifications. But you all came here to speak, and I think you deserve that. So, I think we'll go ahead and let you talk, and then council will take it off the table and we'll discuss it. So, in the interest of time, if you could keep your comments brief. So as you go up to the podium, you need to give your name and your address, and let us know your thoughts.
Does the group have a spokesperson, or do you all want to talk? I mean, it's up to you.
Anybody? Yeah, feel free.
You'll start? Okay, you'll start.
I know one thing, Steve Mitchell is one of the large developers that developed some of the areas you're in, and he took the time to come and talk to various council people as well, so that there was appropriate distance and buffering from the viewpoint of his substantial investment and all of your homes. So that was a person that was kind of considered a spokesperson for those interested in making sure nothing got close, if you will.
Okay, my name's Dan Rhodes, 8039 Silverstone Drive. So the map, where I live, there's a dead-end street right at the field at my house. I've seen a map where they're gonna put that street, they're gonna extend that street back to this industrial park. If
Under the
that's
power
true.
lines?
Huh?
Under the power lines?
Yes,
No,
a map that I've seen.
that's not the map that we're talking about, certainly.
So it's not gonna, there's not gonna be a street that goes into Bridgehampton. From that park.
Long-term, I
I mean,
think we
maybe
have some
in 30
long-term.
years or something, but that's not on the table at all
That's not-
right now.
Where
Okay.
did you get that map, if I may ask?
It-
I was curious.
Okay,
And Dan, what was your last name again? I'm sorry.
Roads,
RH or RO?
O-D-E-S, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
sure.
From
So
the-
you have concern about a road going from Bridgehampton Woods into that
Is that a road?
120 acre undeveloped currently?
Right.
Okay.
And leading back to that industrial park or whatever.
Show me what
Okay.
I'm talking.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Is this it?
No, ma'am.
So this is
from the 2012 plan.
You go to the mic.
Yeah, why don't you go to the
Hang on.
podium and,
Just explain to me. Real
sure?
So according to this plan.
So, Tom Blomquist, 894 Daintree Court in Waterville. Tom
Tom.
Blomquist, B-L-O-M-Q-U-I-S-T. So, 894 Daintree. The hash marks, so you're only gonna do that for M1, but you're gonna leave the rest agriculture until another date when you'll do another decision, and that'll be a whole separate
Correct.
decision, or you're gonna do both together, one will be called, okay, so it'll be two separate things altogether.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
We're talking about just the 43 acres tonight.
Well, specifically now, just the 21.
Right.
Is it 23? 23.
Yeah, 23.37.
Howdy, I'm Nick Palmer. I live at 8005 Silverstone Drive. The picture that Dan Rhodes is talking about was from the 2012 plan that you guys referenced last meeting. So in the plan, they show future developments through what will be zoned the Parks and Rec attached to Silverstone Drive, Donna Ray, Shoemaker, and what was the other one? And
Wellsbury?
Wilkshire.
Wilkshire.
So in the plan, from what you guys referenced last time, there are 4 continued roads from the Choctaw Drive industrial zone to the suburban neighborhoods. I personally am strongly against that, so I am glad to hear that that's no longer on the table.
It's not what we're considering tonight
Okay,
at all.
so is there any way that we can assure that it won't be changed in the future?
No.
No.
That'll be a different
So it's
council.
better
I mean-
just to say no industrial whatsoever then? It'd be better to say don't rezone it industrial whatsoever then, to not let them do that?
Well, that is a matter of personal preference. I know that when initial planning was laid out, there are stub streets so that subdivisions, if they came in, have means of ingress and
Yes.
egress and do not get overpopulated. But a master plan is a concept,
Right.
not a definitive stamp. And we don't know what's going to come. But each of these pieces, any rezoning would be subject to public hearing, comment. Nothing can be changed without going through the process.
Correct, but if this does get changed to industrial, do we have to have another meeting regarding the roads connecting the neighborhoods?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The,
So that would have
the
to be
comprehensive plan though, and it sounds like you've read it.
Twice.
The area to the east was considered to be at the end of the cul-de-sac, was considered to be some kind of light industrial or business type use. The remainder piece was considered to be, the area that you're talking about was considered to be residential, park land, open space, that type of thing. And as Mrs. Duncan mentioned, there's some power lines that go through there, so that's probably gonna limit the use of that property really for anything other than open space.
Yes, sir. Yep, but there are currently in the plan roads going through that. That was my
And, you
concern.
know, those roads, those stub streets could be vacated if necessary. Council could authorize the vacation of those. And as Mr. Dombey mentioned, you know, the master plan is a conceptual thing. And I think the idea, and since you live in the area, you're also well aware that a lot of traffic goes down Canal Road and things like that. And one of the primary emphasis of the master plan also was to kind of relieve that traffic burden that's going that way and try to connect it up through, you know, Choctaw Drive or get it out to Dutch Road where there's a light at an intersection.
Correct.
And we could lessen the flow of the traffic through the neighborhood and out onto Anthony Wayne Trail. So it's kind of conceptual, but on the other hand, you know, there was a desire to find a way to get traffic, another avenue for traffic to get out of the neighborhood.
Yes, sir, and I agree completely with the Anthony Wayne Trail. I just don't agree with connecting 2 other neighborhoods to an industrial parkway. That was one of my large concerns. My house actually is right next to the dead-end road on Silverstones. That was a big concern of mine. I'm in law enforcement. I look at all the cars that go past. I know all the cars that are supposed to be there, the ones that aren't. That was a concern of mine. Increased traffic flow. I have an 18-month-old. I was worried about that. My house is also the school bus drop-off, which is right next to the dead-end road, so I was concerned about that. But mainly, as long as those are going to be changed, I guess my main concern is still going to be noise pollution, light pollution, stuff like that, and then also the property values. So,
Okay, thank you.
Let's talk about property values.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Ford. I live at 6946 Silverbrook Court. My question is, we're talking about making this light industrial. Is this very preliminary, or do we have interested parties looking into that, and can we know who those people are that are considering coming into that industrial area?
And for Mr. Pedro, maybe.
I guess there's always an interest, but to say there's somebody knocking at the door, not tonight.
Okay.
And it's, as John mentioned, 20-plus years ago, that area was looked at for some sort of business park, industrial park of some sorts. So there was always I guess, an idea.
Okay.
And-
I guess, as same concerns as everybody here tonight. You know, we live back in the neighborhood. There's not a lot of traffic back there. I love that my kids can just roam and, you know, it's kind of like when I grew up, and there's not a lot of neighborhoods in any area of Northwest Ohio that can say that the kids can roam the way they do in our neighborhoods. And that's my biggest fear moving forward with this. If we open up these extra roads, Dana Ray is directly behind my house. All the kids jump through my house to go to school. And then you get over to all these brand new homes some of these people just bought contracts on Shoemaker and moved into their house 3 months ago, and they're getting hit with this. Granted, you guys have closed that up for now, but my concern is if that chance of that is still opening in a year and a half from now, we're back at the same thing, saying, hey, now we wanna open that back up. Is that a possibility, or when we do this, are we done in
No.
keeping it agricultural?
It's always a possibility. Again, as things go forward and change, we don't know what's going to happen like anybody. And when you see a stub street, it's a pretty good clue that somebody stubbed the street to go somewhere for something in the future. But again, the idea is to keep this in a small area. The other thing that is good is the city owns the title to the property. Any buyer will have to jump through all the hoops that the city, your council, and your mayor put on the property, including concerns about noise, including concerns about traffic, including heights of the building, including the type of industrial light versus something that's stamping 24 hours a day. Hours of operation, pollution, buffering, all these things will be dictated if and when a buyer shows up because the city is selling it.
Right.
If they don't like the terms that take care of our residents and make sure the thing is a good neighbor, they don't have to buy it. Goodbye.
Okay, great. I just wanted to voice my concern as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm Chrissy Anaya. I live at 797 River Lake Court. I've lived in Waterville since 1983. This community has been absolutely amazing, and now I'm raising my family here since I've had 4 children. And my biggest concern is, what do you mean by industrial? It's not roads. Honestly, it's not. It's like you put in something like Manville that smells nasty, and my kids have to smell that and be like, you know, you can sit there and say, oh, they have to go through all these loops and everything, but what does that mean? Like, how are we gonna like protect where we live?
You
You know?
vote the people in and out, and if they
Right,
make decisions
right, and so we're counting on
that-
you to do this for us, right?
Right.
So this is like huge. Where we live is a very close-knit community, and we all have to stick together in this all. So this is gonna be our main objective here. When we say industrial, what does that mean to Waterville, right? So-
Well,
We live here too, and we agree with you.
Oh, absolutely.
And my grandchildren live next door to
Right.
Silverbrook Court, wherever she is. You know, we're with you on this.
Okay.
We agree
Okay.
with you. We do want to control it.
Yeah,
And I understand your concerns. I really do.
thank you.
I really do. I'm concerned too, but I trust my council members to get us through this process. You know, as you know, we have commercial right in front of it with Duval, and we're really talking about the property right behind that. It's not a large piece of property, but the city has owned it for 20 years. We don't really want to be in the land business, but it's something that we inherited as a council from
Right.
former councils. So our land has appreciated like your homes have appreciated. One of the things that I wanted to say was, you know, I moved to Waterville 25 years ago, something like that. And it was, oh, they're gonna put 24 out in the country and our property values are gonna die. And then it was Nexus is coming and our property values are gonna go down. Our property values have gone up 12% year over year since I got here. I mean, our
What?
property values are not down. Even the houses off of Prairie Boulevard that are the closest to 24 are $330,000 homes. I don't think property values is a really good measure
No,
of
I
the
don't at all,
impact.
but I do think
But-
that our property values are where they're at is because we do have the land without the industrial things that are around us. So that's what we need to like maintain,
Sure.
so.
But there
that's-
is industrial right next to this piece of,
Right, I'm just
right
saying,
next
I'm
to this
trying
piece of
keep things
land.
a little bit back to 1983, and I think that's just all I have to say. you know what I mean?
And Waterville has grown
Yes.
since 1983, and we've, done the Nexus thing and done the bypass thing, and we're gonna continue to grow, and there's gonna be growth out on 64. I know somebody had suggested, well, why don't we just put it out on 64? We don't own property on 64. The city owns the property that we're talking about, and we're trying to make good decisions as residents of Waterville, for this property.
Appreciate that, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Wendy Amundsen, 8028 Trent Lot. And I was just curious when this map was changed, just in between the last meeting and this meeting? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Because you heard the concerns from residents? Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Okay. I also was concerned why we're rezoning this light industry. What's the purpose? Why are we changing it?
Well, if I can answer that, and jump in, fellow council members. To make it more desirable, we've been sitting on this property for 20 years. Your tax dollars, all of our tax dollars has been tied up in it for a long time. We put that infrastructure in there. Costs a lot of money, probably over $1 million. So we're just trying to be good stewards of your money and the property that we do own, like Ms. Duncan said. We shouldn't be in the real estate business, but here we are. So we need to develop that, and we appreciate all your input. Like Mary said, we all live in here together. So we did that in an effort to make it more desirable, because I don't know if you're familiar or keep up, abreast, but all communities compete for business. People want business in their communities. It can't just be residential. Your taxes would go out of the roof, okay? So there's a balance, and we need that. We have an industrial park. We'd like to bring more industry in, not this, Johns Manville. That's heavy industrial. So we're talking light industry. If you go through our current industrial park, that's light industry through there. I believe that's M1 probably. We only have one thermic. I think that's maybe an M2, maybe, at the end. Anyway, it's an M1 too. Okay, so we're all M1. And if you drive around, you'll see it's pretty respectable. So we did rezone that in an effort to make Choctaw Drive more desirable.
Okay, so more desirable to light industry.
Yes.
Yes.
Which, like we see on the way to, sorry, I forget the name of the road, but I know where you're talking about.
Waterville, Mount Clover.
Something
Surface
like that.
combustion, Kaufman, all those,
Crown.
that's light industrial.
Okay. And-
Parker Steel.
So, right behind, Donington, Bridgehampton, Trentlock, Silverstone, that's currently zoned as Parks and Recreation.
It's agriculture.
Open space.
It's agriculture, so, okay, on the,
being
I think on the, maybe it's the 2012 plan, it's down as like Parks and Recreation.
It was just in the master plan.
Right.
Right.
That was the concept.
So, my question, once you bring in light industry into these, is it 43 acres or 23? now?
23.
23. The area surrounding that, is agricultural right now.
Correct.
Correct?
Mhm.
I'm just wondering what's gonna happen to that immediate area that's right around that light industry then?
Well, that's really
Talk
not a
about it.
question to be discussed tonight. That
Yeah, I guess,
That's long
would, if you
term.
just let
maybe
Emma,
maybe I need to rephrase it.
Okay.
I know we're not gonna discuss that tonight, but
Right.
once you make this light industry,
yep.
once you
Well,
make
just
this.
theoretically speaking. So there's like, we have planning commissions and developers come in and they talk to our administrator, and this all goes on when we're all doing our own lives, right? And they develop Waterville, right? Like your neighborhood was developed, right? And so they decide, and there's things called step-down zoning. You've heard of that, if you're familiar with that term. And so, yeah, I mean, those are all things to be considered going down the road, right? And those are projects that maybe come before council, or the administrator proposes it to council, and we have a work session on it or something like that. And that's how those decisions are made.
Amy, we would have another meeting. Wendy,
Okay.
sorry. We would have another meeting. I mean,
Right.
basically, we're just talking about the 23 acres tonight, and then the rest will stay agricultural
Right.
until there's a
understand-
reason to change it.
Right. I understand that. I think I might not be communicating effectively. my concern is still for this 23 acres, once it's turned light industry.
Yeah.
I know we're not discussing these areas tonight, but that will in fact affect those particular areas around it and what is done with them next. If
It
that
could,
makes sense.
Maybe it could stay that way for another 20 years.
Right.
So,
My hope, and I
farmer
would think
could
the rest of
farm it
council
for
would be
20 years.
Choctaw Drive would be developed.
Right.
You know? That would actually, once you put one in, yeah, maybe another would come. And then eventually Choctaw Drive would be a nice industrial park. And that would help offset our tax base. It's pretty impressive, the amount of income taxes that come in from, you know, our current industrial park. You want that. It's something I understand. I understand.
I'm gonna just have to respectfully agree to disagree. I don't want light industry there, because I think it'll affect what I thought might be parks and recreation in the middle of all these subdivisions. So, I'm just gonna respectfully.
Well, it wouldn't be light industry what is being proposed under those power lines. I mean, that would still be the green
Well,
space.
no, I understand that. I'm gonna respectfully disagree.
Okay.
That I do not want these 23 acres, even the 23 acres, to be light industry, because I think it will affect our future possible parks and recreation, which is close to all of our homes that we'd like to enjoy, maybe not next to light industry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there, my name is Kevin Abbey. I live at 8014 Silverstone. So I was here at the last meeting, and I think you mentioned there are 14 people who were notified prior to the
Abutting
last
property.
meeting. Yep. So clearly there's a number of people well beyond 14 who are pretty concerned. So first of all, we want to have you guys come up and state your opinions. So we want to hear from you, anybody who wasn't here last time. So I think a lot of these people I've talked to, they're concerned that we give an inch, you'll take a mile eventually, maybe slowly. So I think that you rezone it to industrial later on down the road. You might rezone another piece of land near that to industrial. So generally the concern here is that it might start off small, but like Wendy was saying, basically, is that it starts off small and you may not be talking about rezoning something else or making something Parks and Rec. It's not a conversation right now, but that's entirely relevant to down the road once this will be rezoned. So we want to hear from everybody who has an opinion on this, so please state your concerns. Thank you.
Erica Lynn, 7634 Wellsbury Drive. I was not one of those 14 individuals who received a letter, but my neighbors were, one of them, multiple actually. My big question for those 3 sections around the 23 that's going to be zoned, are those owned also by Waterville?
Yes.
So we're not in the land industry, or we don't want to be, which tells me that that eventually will be sold.
Say that question again.
Well,
I
we've
wanna-
been trying to sell the property for 20 years now, and we haven't
Nobody
been
wants it.
successful. So I would be happy if we sold some of it, but
But that's a fair statement, correct?
might
It was said
happen.
that we don't want to be in the land industry, and
Well,
so
we
those,
shouldn't be.
Well,
We
government
shouldn't be
own those?
landowners.
but we own that, right?
Oh, city owns
You
the
own
whole
it.
piece. You
We
own
own
it.
it,
We own
right?
it.
Right.
We own it.
We pay for it.
Yes.
Right,
Which is why we're all here,
Yep.
to
Right.
give our opinion, so,
Yep.
okay.
that's right.
Denise Nitz, 8038 Donington Drive. The last meeting that I attended, it concerned the apartments that are going up on Prairie Boulevard. And there was a homeowner there who was aghast that, oh my goodness, I didn't know apartments were going in there. And she was told, well, there's a master plan, and you should have been involved in the master plan when it occurred such and such amount of years ago. And so it sounds to us like your master plan is gonna railroad still down the road, and we don't want light industrial, M1, M2, whatever it may be, near our homes. We love our neighborhoods. We love, when we moved in 21 years ago, we were still a village. We like the quaintness of it. We like to keep the industrial away from our homes. And whatever water concerns may come into our waterways, you know, the trees were all cut down when those apartments came in. There's just a lot of other things that affect us. And so I am opposed strongly against light industrial or heavy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Baruti, 815 River Lake Court. And just to build off of what my neighbor Erica mentioned about, you know, getting out of the real estate business, if that's the ultimate end goal, then clearly you want to rezone all of that land at some point.
I don't know
So,
if that's fair.
well,
but go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just restating the comment that you made at the beginning, that it was, you guys don't want to be in the real estate business, and that was the purpose of starting this. And so, to build off of what the gentleman said back there, a boulder's very hard to move, but once it starts rolling, it's very hard to stop. And so I think that's the concern of everybody here, is that once you start doing it, if the end goal is to get rid of it all, then it could sell quick, we don't know. It may have taken 20 years, but it could take 2 days, so that's, I guess that's all I've got.
No problem. Thank you.
Joseph Kimmer, 7622 Shoemaker. Just real brief. I know a lot of people on the other side of the neighborhood, close to the fire stations, talked about the roads going into theirs. I live on Shoemaker. The 2012 plan actually showed a street off of Choctaw going through my kitchen. Obviously, that's not the case anymore.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I did double take. I'm like, you know, Karen, my wife, you got to look at this. Wilkshire is a street now where is the newest construction. It's still there's no homes on it yet. Wilkshire, it dead ends into close to the tracks. And I assume that would be, if anything were to continue, would be there. And I know, John, I've spoken to you on the phone a few times. I recognize the name because I've murdered the pronunciation of it. And you said that the idea of finishing that would be to alleviate traffic off of Canal. You know, the neighbors in Canal and off of coming off the trail.
Right.
Well, the only way that would really work is you're talking if you're coming north off the trail down to like where McDonald's is on Dutch, right?
Yes.
If you were to Google McDonald's to Wilkshire, where it now dead ends, you know, the quickest path, it's 1.5 miles. A very rough estimate, McDonald's to the Choctaw cul-de-sac, and just, you know, you kind of ballpark it because it's not quite finished yet. It's about 1.2 miles. So you're saying about 3/10 of a mile. I don't know how long it takes to drive. If you get a couple blocks into the neighborhood, you know, 2-3 blocks, you've muted that whatever you're saving. You know, 2 dozen homes maybe, a couple dozen homes, save a quarter of a mile. I don't think you're really alleviating traffic off the canal. And I share the same points you know, the other neighbors made about you know, the neighbors, the kids and stuff and everything, and I just share the same concerns. I don't think it really solves what you're trying to, the problem that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you guys had mentioned earlier in the night about the builder who had built, which I'm thinking you're talking about Mike White. Am I correct? Yeah. So Mike White, what about talking to him about continuing to build on, and keeping the neighborhood going instead of bringing industrial in? And maybe putting a park in the center that the whole neighborhoods all combine and bring into, and then it's all, I know you guys want the industrial for the tax money that way, but houses bring in tax money as well, and it kind of alleviates everybody's concerns.
There's a big difference between price per acre for industrial compared to residential. We're just trying to recoup our investment.
Okay, but you're saying, but your investment is our investment as well.
Correct.
And if the majority of us aren't as worried about that investment and spreading out that loss a little bit between all of us and keeping the residential in there, is that something that we can entertain instead of going down this route? Because, I mean, obviously we got this many people in on a meeting, and the only way I heard about it was a neighbor knocking and saying, oh my God, did you hear about this, you know? And so there's probably plenty of other neighbors that aren't even aware this is going on, even though that burden's on us, I guess, for not looking close enough. But that's just my thought, like if we talk to, looking at that way as well.
We are talking to others about use. I will
Okay.
say that.
Okay.
I can't really tell you who. They'll have to kill me. You know? I know you don't want that.
That's okay.
But we are talking to, we're talking to a lot of people about it, actually. What came back to us was, well, if we do want to put our small business over here, I don't want to have to jump through a lot of hoops. I mean, it's not even zoned for me to bring in whatever it, you know.
Right.
So that's why we started down this path.
Okay. Would anybody else like to make comments? Okay.
My name's Stephen Ruiz. I'm at 794 River Lake Court, and as you guys can tell by the name of the street, we're all pretty much from the same court. So, when you said that you wanted to recoup your investment, when you bought the property, what was it zoned as?
Agriculture.
Okay. So, if it appreciated as agriculture, the only reason you're changing or trying to change it to commercial or industrial is to increase the amount you're going to recoup,
No,
right?
that's not exactly true.
So you're not changing you're not changing the zone.
The city put in a road, right? We put in that
Choctaw Drive.
Infrastructure.
and ran all the utilities back there. And that's an expensive proposition. Now, yes, it was done in 2007, 8.
Well, 20 years ago.
But the property has sat since then. And so, yes, you know, to be fiscally responsible as a council person, I have to be able to say, what are we gonna do with this property? We invested over $1 million to put this street in, plus utilities. Are we gonna just let it sit for another 20 years? Maybe. I mean, so far we haven't had anybody come say, I wanna put something there. But we're open to the idea.
You're open to the idea, but you're also disrupting the neighborhood around it by doing so. Whether you have grandkids there or not. Okay,
She can
you do.
vouch for me.
But
I
you
do.
don't live there.
I mean-
you don't live there.
You would disrupt it if you did not zone the other 3 pieces properly when those pieces came up
Yeah.
for zoning or usage. The idea of zoning, and again, why the drive and all the money was spent was to make this industrial and business.
Right.
But the idea is to protect the residents by taking the heavier use, put it as far away from them as you can, which this is, and then you step the zoning down to the single-family residence. So that normally means some multifamily, some smaller lot R2, and then you get to an R1 over time so that everybody is buffered appropriately and you don't have a factory right in your yard. And nobody is proposing that, nothing is here yet to consider that. And as I mentioned, the control the city has, where your input comes in, is anything that is proposed in here has to go through the hurdle of the planning commission and the council to make sure it is the correct usage, the appropriate buffering, and then stepping down. So it's phase 1, and
But if we never, sorry to cut you off, but if we never made it phase 1, if we never took this step, then we wouldn't have to have this conversation about the property around it.
Absolutely
Down the
true.
road, we wouldn't have
That's
to have
true.
that conversation.
That's true.
Yeah,
Okay.
but there aren't
So-
any developers willing to pay the type of price that this property is worth with the improvements and the taxpayer money that goes in. That has forced people to look at it from a standpoint of proper
Maybe it was a
government.
bad investment then to put the utilities in there. Maybe it was a bad investment, and maybe your first loss is your best loss. Take the loss you took,
Your first loss.
and take the loss that we took because of whoever decided to do that, and the community takes that loss and decides that it's better to leave it as is. And then also a little bit to your point where you said that, okay, if we don't have industry, our taxes can increase and so on and so forth. we don't have this industry now. So attention.
We do.
We don't have it.
Oh, you mean
It's
currently?
not providing us
Not
tax.
Choctaw, I saw that.
Right? So if it's not providing us tax dollars, by not having it, it wouldn't increase our taxes.
Well, cost of running the
Yes.
village goes up, the
But,
city goes up.
but property taxes values continue to increase, right? And as what I learned, I'm new to this town. I've come from California, so I've only been here a couple years. And what I've learned is that Ohio likes to assess their property values every 3 years. And by doing that, if it goes up 12%, we pay more taxes, okay? So essentially, we would be paying more taxes no matter what. So it's not gonna alleviate us paying taxes. And we don't have this entry now, so it wouldn't affect our taxes, and our taxes wouldn't necessarily increase because it's not something that's getting funded that we're taking out of the equation. So if you can't tell, I'm very opposed to it, and hope it doesn't go through. We moved here and we love the area, and hope it stays the way it is. So
Okay,
thank you
good.
very much.
No, I think this is great, and we want to, any more comments, and then what we're going to do is, we'll end the citizens' comments, and then council will discuss it and see what kind of action we take on it. So, how about, yeah, a couple more.
I'm Brad Cox, 7664 Shoemaker Drive. The proposed area is literally right off my backyard. I'm against it 100%. When I bought the house, we did make some phone calls and we were told it wouldn't be developed for 15 to 20 years. 3 years later, we're talking about developing it. So again, we're talking about the other area around it. You know, we're talking master plan down the road, but that could be 6 months from now, it could be 2 years from now. I don't want to look out my window and see industrial of any sort. Again, that's a big part of why I bought the house. So, I mean, that's really all I have to say. I'm 100% against it.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Frank Wright, 8129 Donington. When's your next evaluation of the master plan?
2012?
I believe they're done every 10 years, aren't
Right.
they?
Is that done during the census or?
They're usually done every 10 years, and our master plan would be reviewed in 2022.
22?
Yeah.
And so you've already accounted for the homes over there along Prey and the potential of Myers and the potential of the houses going down behind Speedway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've already accounted for all those different places.
Yes.
Everything's in the plan. All of Waterville's in the master plan.
So it is online?
The master plan, yeah.
145 pages? When I got nothing to do, I'll read it.
It's a master plan.
So then, that's the reason why I was here, because the fact you had this coming off of Bridgehampton, and the question was, some of the people was about the road there. They didn't put a road there for no reason at all, so, and I would like to review the master plan, but if homes are gonna go in behind that area, no problem. But if you're gonna continue, I understand having the light industry, it better be light, because, I mean, you know, people didn't move out here to have a lot of problems with the idea of building. And that's the same way in when I'm asking about the master plan is not specifically pointing on the fire chief. Have you already begun to think about the idea that the one firehouse you have is not going to be enough?
Yes, we have. We've been talking about a fire district with the village of White House. So
Oh.
we have looked at that, yes.
Okay. Last question then, when will we get an opportunity to read what the gentleman here was talking about, the 911 call center?
You can get a copy tonight if you like.
Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. I had one name correct.
Nick Palmer again. Just 2 quick points. Number one, I know we've talked about, so it kind of seems like we have the 23 acres that are currently being looked at to be being rezoned to industrial, the 20 acres or whatever the remainder was from the original plan, and then the zone that could be Parks and Rec. So we continue to talk about how those will be rezoned in the future. My question is, how are we going to know about that? Because this zoning issue, which does affect me due to my view in my neighborhood, I did not know about it until the day of the meeting in July. So how am I going to become aware of those issues if no one's done it? I've also spent about 5 hours in the Bridgehampton community talking to people, and out of the 75 or so houses there, very, very few of them know about it, roughly 5. So that's a concern of mine.
published in the newspaper, and then we have to notify the properties that are contiguous to the piece.
Yes, continuous
So
to it,
that's,
but not
that's
just
why the notices were sent to, the
Specific.
properties that are contiguous to the
That's the
piece,
law.
the particular piece that's being rezoned.
Yes,
So-
sir, yep, and I
So
am aware.
if we did the rest of that, we would notify every property owner that's contiguous to the areas that are proposed to be rezoning. And, I believe there was a map sent out to the contiguous property owners of the original request, that was the 43 acres, and, you know, this is something that, council is considering as a compromise. You know, it's smaller, it's farther away from the residential. It'd be 675 feet from, the, border of the subdivision. So, you know, that was kind of a compromise that council is gonna consider, because of everyone's concerns, but that's how the process works.
Yes, sir. No, and I am aware of that.
Yeah.
My question with that, though, is I believe there were 20 continued properties, if it's somewhere around that number, from the original 43 acres, somewhere around that number. I know I was not one of those, but I am directly affected due to the view. So what my question is with these other acres, if I'm not a continuous property, how am I going to be notified other than the mirror, which I don't read?
Well,
It's on the
that's
newspaper.
that's our local newspaper here,
Right.
so.
So we
that's-
don't have any other
We don't
way
have a
with
choice.
social media or anything like that?
We're required to put it in the paper, correct?
Right.
Yes, you are.
I mean, that's,
Yeah. Yep.
that's the way we go.
No, and I can understand that.
How would you like us to do it?
I
mean,
don't know
we're-
how else we
we're
could do it.
complying with the laws,
No,
we're not
and I
trying to do
understand
anything
that.
underhand.
No, and I'm not saying
We're
that
not
you
trying to
are.
keep
I'm not trying to
information
I
from
understand
you.
that. I'm just saying that of the 75 homes that I've talked to in the last 2 days, it seems that not very many people know, and there has to be a better way.
Well, I agree, in this day of social media, are you volunteering to create an app for us or something?
Possible.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's possible.
Wouldn't that be
That'd be
awesome?
Then I'll just leave it at that.
Instantaneous
That's my only
information.
concern, is just knowing about this in the future. I don't want to spend my time and effort now, only to 5 years down the road not know about it, and then it gets passed.
No, we're with
But then
you.
I guess the only other point I'd have is, anyone that's opposed, can you raise your hands, just so we get a count, just so we can actually see? I appreciate it.
Okay,
Okay,
all right,
thank you.
Do we have one more comment, or, okay,
Then we're done.
one more comment. We'll
Wrap it up.
Bronson Lipinski, 7500 Shoemaker Drive. Quick question. So the new proposal, if that gets sold out, do we recoup if we're done? Or we still have not made our money back by filling up those lots?
Well, the idea, I am sure, is to sell it all over time, but to appropriate uses where everybody has input into what's coming. And
The new proposal I just saw, the 23 acres, that gets sold, done, out the door. Have we got our money back?
We don't know how much, we don't know how much the
don't have a
property.
proposal.
So you don't know how much you're asking for it? If you got what you asked
don't know
for
how
it
much
today,
no, we don't know what we're gonna get. We don't know who might make an offer. We don't know what they're offering. When an offer came in, if it was a stamping plant with long hours, they wouldn't be.
right. So what I was trying to be in your favor a little bit here, saying, hey, if we did sell that, we're good. We can leave the rest alone. But obviously that's not the case, is what I just heard.
No,
We
all
just don't
this
know yet.
area has interest in some type of development over time. We can't argue that. What the question is the development appropriate to protect the property and step it into those areas versus having it abut? And there's plenty of land to do the appropriate step down and the appropriate buffering of the area that might be developed with some small business. We just don't know. Duval is there, nobody
Yep, I
knows
know
they're
Tom.
there,
Yeah.
nothing's happened.
Yep.
They're a small business. We'd like more of them.
Right.
So you would want to sell all the property.
Sooner or later,
Well,
something's gonna be
someday.
done. Yeah,
If we ever get a buyer.
that's,
I don't think we're gonna get a buyer.
Okay, guys, this could go all night, I
I
guess,
just-
so if we keep circling the wagons, if,
Yep.
I'll give one more person, I'm sorry.
Okay.
At some point, we
Well,
gotta,
he just brought up a very valid point that I was kind of surprised when he asked what you guys thought these things would sell for. Real estate is my life. That's what I do.
Oh.
And I'm a residential agent, but I have many friends in commercial. Have we brought a commercial agent to do a
this has
comparative
been
map?
appraised at
Yes.
$20,000 an acre
As agriculture, or
And-
as light industrial?
as light
And what?
industrial.
And have we sat down with a plan, like got somebody involved and made a plan on how these are gonna be marketed and?
There's nobody here yet.
Okay.
Well, we do
So that's a
have
yes,
to-
you guys have sat down with someone?
As, as part of our Waterville Economic Development Group, we do have a gentleman that represents Waterville.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And he
is a
realtor to drum up
No,
business
that's fine.
for
I just,
Waterville. Yeah.
by the blank looks up there, it really concerned me when he asked if you guys would recoup your investment off the sale of those existing parts, and nobody really had an answer.
No.
That's what.
It's because of the way he asked the question.
23 times 20 will not do it.
Yeah.
Jeremy Thomas, 833 River Lake. Sorry, I was mowing my grass.
I didn't
you just,
catch your
were
name,
you
I'm
just
sorry.
saying?
What was your name?
Jeremy Thomas?
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy. Were you just saying that stamping plant is considered light industrial?
No.
Is that,
No.
did you say stamping? You said
No, I
stamping.
said that type of stuff will never be there.
You just said stamping plant.
Will never be there.
Will never
Won't
be
be
there.
there.
I wouldn't approve it. That would never happen.
No, the whole idea is if you're
I
gonna
want
have
more
something
Devals.
there,
Everybody start a company.
what's there would have to be contained.
We want more Devals.
You regulate outside storage, none. You regulate noise, none. You regulate hours of business, not crazy shifts. You regulate the height of the building. You require the mounds, the buffering, the trees, everything to insulate that. And then you, as you go forward, would step down from more like apartments to smaller houses on smaller lots, and then into bigger. It's step-down zoning, it's what's recommended everywhere, and it does allow you to have some business revenue because residential properties are losers from a tax standpoint. It costs more for a city to take care of residential properties than they get back. And property tax does not come back to a municipality. Where a municipality gets their revenue to take care of providing good services, maintain parks, etc., is from income tax and profit tax on businesses.
So how many businesses do you think will go on the 20 acres?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know who might be coming. You might get a nice campus that wants walking trails for their employees at lunch and says, we want all 23 acres. You could get somebody small like Duval Woodworking up there. He might only take 3 or 4 acres. It's really an unknown quantity, and that's why I say the ability to regulate what comes, because your government is going to sell it to him with terms and conditions that make sure your residences don't get trashed, and their residences. The mayor lives on Brookhampton?
Bridgehampton.
Bridgehampton. Yep, she's right there. So she doesn't want to see it either. Neither does council people with grandchildren. But the idea is to take a small portion, do it right, regulate it, and have some revenue come in from a business.
You're gonna sell the other part of the land because there's 40 acres there. You're not
You
gonna-
could
that
at some,
land's never gonna be
some
sold.
point in time, but it's not up, it's
I-
not for
We're
discussion.
concerned. I know you
It's not
keep on putting your arms up.
No,
We're
I
just
mean,
concerned
I
because
wish we had a
20
buyer.
acres
I
is a
wish I
lot
could
of
answer
a
all the
lot of
questions,
land.
'cause we don't know.
I mean, 20 acres you said isn't a lot of land, but 20 acres is a lot of land.
It's a lot of land.
Yeah, it's a chunk.
I'm opposed.
Okay, got it, Jeremy. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Barb.
Thank you. Okay, so, thank you for all your comments. Thank you for coming here tonight. So we're gonna go ahead and, move to take ordinance 0819 off the table. Is there a motion? Maybe not. Okay, so maybe we, talk about keeping it tabled? Someone like to
I think we should keep it, I think we had a lot of good discussion tonight, a lot of very informative comments. Certainly appreciate everybody's comments and everything they had to say. And I think it would be a good idea for council to continue to consider the alternatives with regard to that property, particularly since nobody, as Tim said, is expressing immediate interest in purchasing. I don't think we'll lose any time. Tim, do you think if we delayed another 30 or 45 days?
What I had asked last meeting, two weeks ago, that we would table this for 60 days, now 45. There are some other interests going on, and I can't go into that at the moment, but in my mind, it's kind of a big puzzle I lived here many years. I know some of you are newer, but believe me, your council has your interest at heart. There's a lot of dynamics going on, and our good mayor, Lori, she always tries to balance the emotions from the facts. And I think in about 45 or perhaps 60 days, there'll be some more facts on the table, and that we can probably have a better communication and perhaps a better plan. So I mentioned to some of my council members individually that I was interested in tabling this for 60 days. I was going to do that last meeting, but again, to the good foresight of our mayor and our administrator, you folks were already sort of planning on being here, so it wasn't fair for you to come here on the 23rd and us to just not talk about it. So I think I wrote down some great information from all of you, but I want to leave you with probably 3 key points. It's not easy up here. These things have been growing for 20+ years, so I think 60 days is not out of the question to flush out some of the answer or questions that you've asked us. We don't know everything, but I do know that we're trying to do the right thing, and we are a small community. We do need a balanced tax base. We've got a great business community, and perhaps this is going to be a nice fit if it gets to that point. I'm not suggesting it tonight, but I think we've got some good feedback, and whoever was asking about the notice, you will be noticed, or you will be getting noticed when we take action. But I'm recommending at least 60 days. I don't think it'll be any sooner. We'll come back with some more input and some more ideas. It might be the same, I don't know. But there were good questions asked. What's going to go next door? Have we talked to other developers, home developers? And the answer is yes. But it's a public land. We'd have to have a public sale if we decide to do that. The other thing is, when this village at the time bought that 125 acres, there was an idea, there was a concept. And the parkland was the majority of that, or open space, and some kind of a business park way up by what we're talking about. So I don't want anybody to think that this just sprang up, a couple meetings ago. This has been sort of on a concept plan. It's just that you folks are there today, so things have changed, and we're going to take that into account. So believe in us. Let us soak this in, and certainly you've got our email addresses as you think of more things in the next few weeks. My colleagues here, my council members, are not going to do the wrong thing. We're going to take our time and do the best that we can. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a proposal to put it on the table till our December 2nd meeting. That is actually 63 days or 4 days, something like that.
You okay with 63 days?
So, I mean, I'd like to give you a real date and not just say 60 days. It's December 2nd would be the next meeting that we would be discussing.
Is that a motion?
So you all can.
Get a motion?
I made a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ordinance remains tabled. So, thank you for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of our meeting.
Appreciate your comments.
Yes, you guys are well informed and educated. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to take, we'll take a minute.
Oh, okay. See you, Christopher. Nice to see you.
There he is. I don't know. What mine has all my notes in it.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah.
The guy's in
We'll
charge.
get you one.
Come on. You know that's not me.
If we could, quite frankly, I'd be fine with just rezoning that and then making permanent green space around there.
Where are we?
We're at ordinance 1419.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Just freaked them out. I know, but it's not.
And then we
Freaked them out. Yeah. We're just taking a minute here to
We're taking a minute break.
settle back in, and Mr. Bruno had to take care of some business. He'll be right back.
Oh,
So a temporary.
Sarah, you're staying?
Pause.
Okay.
Good.
Cool. he's like, no way. I've heard enough.
Okay,
We're in a little pause, are we? Pause.
We're waiting for
we're on a
Mr.
little
Bruno.
pause. We're waiting for Mr. Bruno, but we can get going. He'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Ordinance 1419, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of Waterville by granting a conditional use permit to allow a residential use on a parcel zone, C2, commercial district located at 33 to -35 North River Road. First reading was scheduled for July 22nd. The second reading was scheduled for August 26th. The third reading, public hearing, and legislative action scheduled for September 9th. It was tabled until this evening, September 23rd. John, any more information regarding this? Obviously, we got a new piece of
Language.
some conditional.
Right. I did speak to the property owner, and as you know, he was here at the last meeting, and I think council addressed your concerns to the property owner, and he was amenable to adding an additional condition of approval, which involved the exterior maintenance of this property at 3335 North River Road in terms of keeping it free of nuisances and tall grass and weeds and things like that. And he did indicate he would, he was in favor of that. He had no objections to that, and he isn't here tonight, but I did talk to him about it, and the law director reviewed the additions to ordinance 14-19.
Great. Okay, well, I would like to move to approve ordinance 1419 as written. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to move to take ordinance 1419 off the table.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and I would like to move to approve ordinance 1419 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We need a roll call on that. Do we?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Duncan?
Yes.
Yes.
Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Rosen?
Yes.
All right, moving on to ordinance 1519. An ordinance amending certain sections of chapter 505 of the general offenses code with respect to animals and fowl. The first reading was scheduled for August 26th, the second reading scheduled for September 9th, and the third reading and legislative action scheduled for this evening, September 23rd. Mr. Kokenauer?
I don't have anything else to add to this. It was recommended for approval by the Park and Rec, as Mr. Bruno indicated at the last meeting.
Okay, can we have discussion now, or do we move to approve it and then discussion?
Discussion.
Okay, all right, I would like to amend just a small portion of this legislation. Under section 1, under definitions A, under 5, it says on leash, controlled at all times on a leash not more than 6 feet long. I think a law is only as good as how much you can enforce it. I would like to amend it to just have the period at the end of leash and eliminate not more than 6 feet long.
So the leash could be 12 foot long?
Well, they have these retractable leashes.
You
I mean, some
ever
of them are
walk
10.
a dog with a retractable leash person? Your dog is being attacked by the retractable leash.
Yeah, but do we
is
really
out.
want our law enforcement having to
20
go
feet.
around with a measuring stick?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean, and saying, well, that's a 7
That's a
feet long, or that's
7-foot
8
leash.
foot long, or that's, I mean, is it reasonable to just expect people to keep their dogs on a leash?
Well, if it were, we wouldn't need this ordinance.
Well, we're tightening it, I get that, but I just think, people have they have little dogs, they're on retractable leashes.
I think there needs to be some kind of standard, and if there was an incident involving 2 dogs, or, I think the gentleman from the Park and Rec was saying that, that dogs are attacking his dog or things like that, and this gives you a standard, and you do need to have some kind of control, and you're gonna lose control as the leash gets longer. I mean, I think that's pretty clear that.
You could go to 8 maybe, but I've seen the retractables that are probably 25 feet
30,
long.
yeah.
And I've got 2 dogs, one who's 18 years old, deaf and blind, and she'll attack anything. And I've had problems with those retractables. The people don't retract them, they let them, oh nice doggy, go see that doggy. No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
So is 6 feet maybe like a common,
It
It's a
is,
common
but
length for a
go to
leash.
8 if you want a little more leash,
Barb,
so to
8?
speak.
8 would be acceptable.
7.5?
I don't think they make them that. I know they go to 8.
Joe, you good with 7.5?
All right.
Was this, I don't want to interrupt. Was there an incident that, because we already have
Yes.
some legislation, there was an incident?
The dog was running
Yes,
loose, I think.
we have had a couple
There's been
incidents.
probably at least 3 incidents.
Weren't they running loose though?
They weren't on a leash.
Completely?
Yeah.
They were running loose.
Don't we already have that in the
And a
code?
park.
I'm just curious, I guess, John.
No.
Does our code already require leashes,
No.
or
No.
just requires containment while they're on
It's not in the
It
code.
has the word control, but
not leashes?
Yeah.
Okay. I
It
should've
was a
looked
little
before tonight,
difficult
but
to
I didn't,
enforce.
so.
I can't walk my foul.
Okay, I'd like to move to approve ordinance, well, I have to first move to amend ordinance 1519 to include not more than 8 feet long in the legislation. Do I need to get a second on that?
You do, and I will.
Okay. Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay. And then I'd like to move to approve ordinance 1519 with the amendment. The 6
second.
feet, or the 8 feet, rather. Okay. Is there a second? Okay. And then you want to do a roll call on that then? Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right. New business, ordinance 1619, an ordinance amending ordinance 719, the amended fiscal year 2019 annual appropriation ordinance and declaring an emergency. Mr. Gokenauer.
Thank you. The ordinance is our third amendment to the budget this year, and I've included I guess, the significant items in there. We added a street light to our street lighting project. The fire department was able to get a BWC grant for a turnout gear washer, so that's included. Computer replacement, unfortunately, they're not going to support the Windows that we have now, Windows 7, so we'll be having to upgrade to Windows 10, and in light of all the things that happen with computers and things like that, if you're not updating your equipment, you're subject to problems, and so we'd like to move forward with that. There's a TIF service payment that's been going up every year because we've had more development on Prairie Boulevard. That's where that TIF area is, the tax increment financing area. And then we did have a change order that council approved earlier in the year for the Michigan Avenue water line project, and we're finalizing that with this budget amendment.
All right. I'd like to move to approve ordinance 1619, declaring an emergency. So I move that the rules be suspended to allow for the passage of ordinance number 1619 as an emergency measure. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And then I move for final passage. I'm sorry. Oh, you do a roll call on that? Okay. No.
Yes.
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 Okay, and then I move for final passage of ordinance number 1619, first and final reading as an emergency measure.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2619, a resolution requesting the auditor of Lucas County, Ohio, to issue advance payments on the current collection of taxes due to the city of Waterville during calendar year 2020. Mr. Goodman.
Thank you. This is a procedural issue that we do every year. We request, the auditor asks that every community in the county request advance payment of our property taxes that are due, and instead of getting them on the usual collection dates of March and August, we can get them earlier. So it's nice from a budget standpoint.
Yeah, very good.
There's no penalty for that, John? They don't charge us some 10%?
Well, they actually charge us on our regular distribution, so they would charge us anyway.
Oh.
So we might as well get it quicker.
further discussion on that? No? Okay, seeing none. Move to approve resolution 2619.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Resolution 2719, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Mr. Gokenhour.
Thank you. This is another issue that we have to do on an annual basis, and we're agreeing with the auditor's inside millage rate that they collect every year, and they have a number. We're expecting about $533,000 in property tax revenue for the general fund and the police pension fund, and that's about a 1.5% increase over last year, and they're asking us to certify that for them to collect.
Okay, very good. Is there any comments, discussion?
Does this include the, is this how we did the cemetery with the inside millage?
Yeah, it's very similar, very similar.
But I mean, is that part of the,
That's not part of the our certification.
no?
Right, we're a separate tax entity.
Oh, that's right, cemetery district, right.
Okay. I move to approve resolution 2719.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. There's no, is there any other information on scheduled business for this evening? No, ma'am. Okay, seeing none. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, we should get the motion.
So moved.
Second. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.